All right. Okay, so for some reason it's gone all the way back to the beginning, so I apologise for that. I may have mucked it up just a little bit. So if you can jump on in. All right. Now we talked about the different forms of market failure, how many there were, quite a lot. We've given you case studies, we've discussed case studies. And we needed to remember about wealth and income inequality. Looked at poverty levels in Malaysia. We had a working understanding of the idea of allocative efficiency, and in particular the terminology used, right? How you use the understandings of consumer surplus and producer surplus in order to come to an understanding about allocative efficiency. So we got past there. Now, negative externalities, we had a go at drawing those the other day. And so this is where we're up to now. All right. Now, there are lots of case studies. It's negative externalities of production. As I've said to you, they tend to be the ones that we fall onto first. We see them. They're right in front of us. Quite often it's the factory, or it's pollution, it's the damage to the environment. It's all of those sorts of ideas, right? There are lots of examples. So please have a case study at hand somewhere, okay? And there are some there that you can use potentially as well, if you need to. Now, one that I find quite interesting is this idea about road deaths. So this isn't the congestion on the roads, right? Externality. This is about people who have car accidents, okay, and died. There was a weird one the other day. Did you see this in America? I believe it's the first case, possibly, that it's ever happened, but a girl died in the bath because she was charging her phone next to the bath and she dropped her phone into the bath. Shocking. And apparently nowadays there's apparently 5 people a year in America who die in the bathtub from charging their phones by the bath. So road deaths is again one that we don't often consider because we talk about the pollution from cars, we talk about the congestion issues, and we don't necessarily consider road accidents. And this one came out in 2008, so it was a very long time ago, and it suggested that in the US, just the accidents alone added an extra $1 billion worth of costs into the American economy. A week, yeah. All right. So my question to you, see if you can figure out what the cost might be of car accidents per week in Malaysia. I don't know if you've been on the roads around here, but okay. Right, we got passed by a motorbike who was going right down the middle of the road, very fast. No, have a look. Ask Dr. Google, absolutely fine. All the best. Au revoir. Au revoir. Go team. Yeah. I might show you the other one. That is very funny. But she's very clever. She's been around a long time. She has regular characters and uses a lot of stand-up shows. A lot of her shows. Yeah, you may not find a whole lot recent because I think that they've probably got other thoughts in mind. Yeah. There you go. Adam Worth. Who's Adam Worth? Oh, Andrew. Yeah, I thought it was Adam. I thought yeah. You know, Joel was trying to pick on one of my year 12s. Not this Joel, other Joel.
Which Joel? Okay.
Joel
Which one?
Yeah, the one who sits in your seat. Zara. No, Zara. Said to me, she does economics too. I said, yeah. So am I better than her? I said, apples and oranges, you're year 13, she's year 12. If she was in year 13, yes, she must be. But she's in year 12. So, no, you cannot make that comparison. Right, so we seem to be coming up with a fairly consistent number across all, including Adam Worth, who suggests 9.2 billion ringgit in 2016, which works out to apparently $177,000 ringgits per week. Is that a surprise? No? All right. Your older brother would say, no la. Because he kept...
Like this,
yeah.
no la.
You like that. I ended up getting a CanLa badge. Not badge, what are they? Magnet. Because it was in the shop. And I couldn't work out why people were saying la on the end of everything. And Matten used to do it all the time. All the time. Still does it. With a Scottish accent. What part of Scotland? Alright, well, at least it's not Glaswegian. Wouldn't be able to understand them then. Alright. How about this one? This might surprise you as well. Outdoor air pollution. I guess they have to stress outdoor air pollution, don't they? Because indoor air pollution might be a bit awkward. But outdoor air pollution kills 3.3 million people in most cities, mostly in cities, every year, which is more than HIV, malaria, and influenza combined. Right, and yet in most cities it's not actually monitored or figured out. So trying to work that one out is going to be a bit of a challenge. Yeah, and that is from 2015. So that is, 7 years ago now. Isn't that scary? Does the passing of time not scare you? Yeah, the fact that it was 22 years ago was the new millennium. That's how long ago. Yeah? It was quite exciting because at that point there were people who had been alive in the previous decade, the previous century, and the previous millennium, which is quite a cool thing to sort of say. Now, if we try and correct these particular externalities, the most common one for production that we will see is that idea of tax. But the big issue that a lot of you found was because of the difficulties in quantifying the externalities, but also the difficulty in trying to apply the tax to basically to a moving target, you aren't necessarily going to be able to eliminate completely the externality. Yes, you should also take into account things like elasticity, etc. as well. Potentially not as much because it's production, but I think that there's probably still some there if you're talking about a raw material in particular. Now again, I'm going to stress for our HL friends, there is your welfare loss, and there, tiny little triangle, same idea, specific bullet point in the syllabus, HL only, calculate the area of welfare loss. So I'm going to say, SL learners, you're not going to have to calculate it. I'm going to say that. Alright? That would be me. Had a whole group of teachers in here yesterday. Mr. Adam and I were explaining how Nearpod works to them. It was quite fun. Go through all the Nearpod and show them all the different things that you can do. Alright, okay. So remember that question is how do you quantify the externality and then how do you successfully apply a tax to it? Right. How do you enforce the tax? How do you implement it? And will it be effective or not? Positive externalities of production are a little bit more straightforward in a sense, but also difficult to quantify. Right? The classic ones we talk about, obviously, education and healthcare. At the moment, you could suggest vaccination programs. Yeah. In fact, there's some really interesting economics going on, like behavioural economics, etc., about vaccination programs and all of those sorts of things. There was a news report from New Zealand. You know how in America there were all those people who got upset and started smashing up stores because of the mask mandate? Yeah. New Zealand, you'd kind of think would be well out of that sort of loop, but no, there are crazy people there too. Now there's a small city, I say city, it's very small. It's called Ashburton. It's all the way down near the bottom of the South Island. And with the recent impact of COVID, etc., the government of New Zealand have put a traffic light system across the country, and it's a little bit confusing, but it's more or less the same as what we've got, and you have to show your vaccination certificate to get into shops. And of course, this particular person in Ashburton got a little bit upset with being forced by the government to show a vaccination certificate, so they smashed up the place. And the shop owner, who was a bakery, had to call the police. Now it's Ashburton, so it's possibly the only bakery shop in the place. So it's basically one street. Yeah? So even in New Zealand, you'll get people who will be more than a little bit involved with regard to that. But yeah, so vaccination as a positive externality is relatively new in the context of economic theory, and then obviously behavioural economics can be linked as well, and that will be some research that will be ongoing, I would imagine. Yes. Yes, that's a very good question. There are a number that you can make that argument with education and healthcare also falling into that. The majority of times you think about it, you've got to, I guess, look at who it is who's gaining the most benefit from it from a societal point of view, and where it's actually originating from. So I would make an argument production quite often. But yes, a lot of them are debatable as to whether they are production or not. Yeah, good question. All right. With positive externalities, the graph changes because you're now looking at the social costs again, but they will be on the right-hand side. So we're wanting more of this product produced. We're wanting potentially a lower price for it as well, potentially. And your arrow of, in this case, welfare gain is pointing that way. All right? And this is where, again, some learners fall into a trap, trying to point the arrow the other way. Now, I would make the same comment about the higher level learners in the calculation. However, in the syllabus, it talks about welfare loss being a calculation for higher level learners. It doesn't actually talk about potential welfare gain, but I don't know that there's much difference when you look at how it's calculated. So, yeah. Yeah, so the method of calculation will be exactly the same. So even if they did throw a positive externality at you, you should still be able to work it out. Yeah, it's semantics that's the problem with that, yeah. Right. What else was I going to say about that? Something else. Yeah, I'm loath to tell you this next bit, but if I don't, Andrew might. Mathematically, this is a geometric shape. Okay? So if you're asked to identify it, that's where it is. Okay? If you're asked to calculate it, that's where it is. However, the actual shape and the amount of area actually does occur in other places on the diagram. Alright, so we used to do that sort of thing quite often at university, is we used to just work out whether this was the same, whether that was the same, whether that was the same, and try and work out different areas on the graph that actually equal the same as the welfare gain, or in some cases the welfare loss. Mathematically. But diagrammatically, that's where it is. So, here's your next have-a-go challenge, positive externalities of production. good. Yeah, just be careful with your labelling there, Joel. Other Joel. Just and I know it's not easy, but otherwise they might get confused and think you're talking about that. Good. Looking very good, King. Well done. A couple more coming in. Wow, we went to town on that one. Does that run out? Another one here. All right. Okay. Right, now, again, it's the idea of sort of the traditional approach, the very textbook approach, and our modern age. So we need to start thinking a little bit broader with our definition of demerit goods. Okay, we need to start thinking a little bit broader with our understanding of what creates an externality and what doesn't, because there's, modern goods that we wouldn't have thought about 10 years ago. Okay, we now talk about smartphone addiction. We now say that, was it Instagram that girls get depressed over? Is that the one? It was in there was a study about it. They actually did a study. Yeah. Yeah. And it's also, and it's to do with the likes and dislikes and stuff as well. And they're wanting to get rid of those off of the channel. Yeah, it's all of that. And they're just learning this sort of stuff now. So there will be more in the future of these sorts of goods that we now think, oh, maybe that's not a good idea. Yeah. Okay. So our traditional demerit goods, quite clearly alcohol, illicit drugs, and cigarettes. But nowadays we are thinking the sugary drinks, sugary foods, and the highly processed fast foods. Yeah. Oh, goodness me. Yes, I was trying to work out what a possible meritable future of Yeah. What they're now doing, and I don't understand this, is they're now compiling people's images and videos off of the Instagrams and the like, and the TikToks, and they're putting them up onto YouTube as videos as well, which I kind of think, well, you've already got one platform, why are you, but in any case. But yeah, the definition for us, for a demerit good, is that it is deemed to be harmful to society. Now, yeah, there's a lot of TOK unpacking with all of that. And yes, that does change over time. Absolutely it does. Yeah? 100%. Yeah, I mean, you think these products, right? You didn't leap out to defend me. Come on, Danae. Obviously, I need to pay her more. This particular product, there has been a lot of changes over time in what is considered demerit in that sort of illicit drug sort of category, right? Because in the past, you used to have wars over opium, which nowadays is obviously a no, right? But who controls the opium, etc., people would fight over. Yeah, we do need to be careful with regards to the wording we use, because in some countries it is being legalised, in other countries it's only being decriminalised. And the decriminalising just means they're taking away the punishment, but it's still illegal. Yeah? So they're just not sending you to jail. So yeah, you could make that as an argument, right? That any of those sorts of illegal products that then become legal, the suggestion is that society is now saying that maybe they're not as demerit as they possibly once were. However, this category is legal, a lot of it. So, and it's still considered a demerit good. Yeah? I'm not suggesting that we're going to end up with bans on these sorts of products necessarily, but taxes, I would think, are really close to it now in a lot of countries. In some countries, not in others, and sometimes they propose them, but you can understand a sugar tax, for example. You've got to then figure out which of the products have got sugar in them. You've got to have some sort of quantification scale, right? Because remember, in the McDonald's hamburgers, the Big Mac, I'm sorry, I'm looking at you and talking about McDonald's and Big Macs as if you know what a Big Mac is, and I'm sure you do, but it wasn't implying that that's where you go every day or anything like that, okay? Big Macs, are we familiar with the Big Mac? Okay, and I know you're all thinking about Joel because that's his street nickname, Big Mac. Right. Take your pick. Alright, both of them would wander down an alley in New Zealand and be, generally speaking, okay. Generally, depending on the alley. Yeah. South Auckland, no. Not at all. Right. West Auckland, yeah, you'd be probably all right. Yeah, there is so much sugar in the McDonald's Big Mac that it could actually legally be classified as a confectionery. That the only reason why it's not classified as a confectionery is because they put a gherkin in it, right, and that apparently outweighs the sugarness of it. Yes, and most people don't go out. Right, so there's, and believe it or not, a lot of the sugar is actually in the buns. Yeah? Yeah, I just wondered if you were going to go there. I did, and now you've dissolved onto the floor. There would be a New Zealand joke there, and we will move right away from that. Okay, so that's where it is. And you don't normally think that, because when I first heard that, I thought the meat part of the hamburger, yeah, and yes, there is some sugar in that, because it's processed, but the actual sugar actually is in the bread, which again is quite, I think, quite interesting. Okay, so yeah, so trying to work those sorts of things out, and businesses will go to great lengths to avoid having the tax. So they'll say, no, it's not sugar, it's something else. Or now we're going to use an artificial sweetener, not a sugar. Is that better or worse? And then you've got to have that argument, you know. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure which is better or worse, depending on what you're actually looking at. All right, processed meat apparently would need to be taxed at 166% in Germany to recover most of the healthcare costs of eating it in Germany. Right, there's growing numbers of people who biologically now, apparently, are unable to eat red meat because we have historically been consuming a lot of it. Some parts of the world more than others. Okay, if you've ever been to South Africa or New Zealand or Australia, they eat an awful lot of red meat. And it actually isn't, when you eat it in that quantity, is not really good for you. So, for example, for my 21st, we went to a restaurant that advertises, me and my mates, hey, let's go, right? And it was a restaurant, and what they sell is they sell what's called the killer kilo. And it was an entire kilo of steak, which doesn't sound like a lot. No, kilo. And it was the potatoes and the salad and all of that as well. And it was considered a challenge to eat. But it's an entire kilo of meat in your insides. Yeah? That's a lot of meat. Right? But it was nice. It was very nice day. I got really close. Yeah. I was very competitive. Particularly back then. I got very close. I think one of us did the complete bit. I managed the meat, but I didn't manage to get through all of the potatoes, which really annoyed me because I like potatoes. And it's also, obviously, they put salad on there just to sort of, something green. All right, but yeah, word of warning, don't, a whole kilo of meat, not a good idea. They do that in New Zealand quite a lot. We have a lot of issues with that sort of obesity issue in New Zealand, and it's about what's called the Gigantification of Confectionary. So you don't just have the sort of the regular sized Red Bulls. You have, all right. You don't just have Easter eggs. Yeah, you don't just have a normal Easter egg. They actually sell an entire kilo of Easter egg, a whole kilo of chocolate in an Easter egg. All right, and kids get given it. Kids. My nephew, when he was, I don't know how old he would have been, 12, got given by one of his relatives, none of mine, one of his other relatives. He got given a kilo egg, both he and his sister, a kilo of chocolate, as well as other eggs and bunnies and other things, because it was Easter time. And they managed to eat an entire kilo of chocolate. Yeah? And that's quite a regular thing. The chocolate bars, they come in small, medium, and New Zealand size. All right? Quite regular. Right? Which is why these sorts of diagrams happen. Okay? All right? I'm not kidding you. If you do go to New Zealand or Australia, go into one of the supermarkets and just look at the size of the confectionery and the drinks. All right? We would have children who would go to, after they'd been at home, on their way to school, they would stop off at the supermarket or the equivalent, New Zealand equivalent to the 7-Eleven, okay? And they would buy a 2-litre bottle of Coca-Cola and chocolate bars as a snack before school. Yeah? I'm not kidding you. One of my tutees at one of my schools in New Zealand that I taught at, he would drink 2.5 litres of Coca-Cola before school started. That was his only breakfast. Yeah, so these sorts of numbers, then you're kind of understanding. Right, so that brings us on to the idea of negative externalities of consumption. Again, you're shifting the curve, but it's the consumption one, demand. So the arrow of welfare loss is pointing in the other direction again. And once more, that's the track that students fall into. Where is the arrow? Okay, where do I put it? And again, calculation, HL only for that welfare loss. Yeah. Yeah. Next term. Yes. That's the plan. And as we know, plans can change. But that is definitely the plan. I had chat. Have I said this to you? No. Mr. Joe, who I always maintain sounds like a coffee shop. Right. Mr. Joe sent out an email about sports, who wants to participate in sports next term, assuming everything continues the way it's going and we should be allowed, and ... Here are possible days, here are possible sports, and he put under 13 basketball. So I emailed him back pretty much straight away and said, yeah, what about the senior students who've had 2 years of no season, and for whom this would be an absolute lifeline? To which he replied, I didn't know that there was anybody in the school who could sort of coach and manage basketball teams at that sort of level. So he and I had a sit down and we went through the history of basketball here, and I talked to him about individual players, talked to him about my background with basketball, because he's from Alice Smith, so talked to him about, the difference, but also talked to him about what the players here need and what could be very quick fixes, and he was quite excited about it. So that's good. And yeah, he agreed to have an under, I think, what did we phrase it as? Under 18 basketball. And the problem is obviously going to be SOP based, and then level of demand. He was concerned that there would be students who would be in the football team as well, because it's going to be on at the same time. It would be Thursday after school. I said, no, I don't think there will be. And who cares? It's football. All right. I explained to him that it is very easy to fall into patterns and problems like ignoring the girls. That's very easy to do. So I said there are some incredibly talented girl basketball players, and it will be very easy in this sort of environment with the SOPs, etc., to just cater to the boys, because there's going to be plenty of boys. But he was quite excited by it, and he wants over Christmas, or he wants to, I think, talk to me again, but over Christmas he wants to redesign the uniform for the basketball team, or get some students to do a redesign of the logo and then get it printed over Christmas, so that they can have it. I showed him my ones at the back, which, despite the typo in them, the students quite liked. Well, they designed it. Bonus points, you can see the typo. Yeah. Yeah, that is that. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I thought there was that's one percent. No, that was Mark's blog. 'Cause yeah. That's the plan. I've already got year 12 boys who keep coming to me and saying, oh, we want to do basketball. Can you come out to the gym today? No, I can't. Why not? I've got a meeting. I've got other things I'm doing. It's not until next term that I'm going to be freed up in order to do that. Okay. What about today? No. The only problem is court space. All right, that's the only problem, and he's looking into it. He honestly is, and he's quite, forward thinking, and he agreed with me, and he's actually raised it with the bosses, and they actually, I believe, agreed. I don't know that they've actually planned for it or yet, but getting rid of the climbing wall. Yep. And he said that the senior leadership asked him to put it somewhere. So he's been wandering around the school trying to work out where to put it. I said to him, put it outside. Yeah, it doesn't need to be inside. It just needs to be, say, outside the actual gym itself under some cover. That's it. All right. Sorry? Yeah, there is. Yeah. Well, you just have to be a little bit more linear with the thought process, because around the back here, so there's the classroom that goes all the way through. Harriet's classroom. Harley dismisses tremendously. And then right next door, there's the PE office, which is supposed to put it in there. And there's big great walls there. Yeah.
Oh well.
Get rid of the staircase. Well, you can't, but my thought, and I said this, I don't know how many years ago, is to actually push that wall out. Where the climbing wall is, where that door is that goes down to the stairs, push that wall right out. Right, because you've got the space out there. I mean, you can't because we don't own the building. So you'd need that permissions thing. Right? But do that. Okay? The other thing is that they've got weird things, right? They've got a gym up on the 4th floor for some weird reason. Yeah. Yeah, there's all sorts of, things that, I've told you this sort of stuff before. But there are ways you can do things. You just need to sometimes think a little laterally with it. Right, so you can guess what I'm going to ask you to do. Have a go. Negative externality of, apologies for the grammar there, of consumptions. It sounds more like the medical condition. As if he was attacked with a bit of the consumption. Yeah, so the quick fix thing for the basketball is the uniforms. Get that right, and a lot of the other problems will fall into place. It really will. And it would be something that you can, because you can play with a lot of that. And he also agreed with me that things that would be really good would be sports prizes and prize givings. I said, well, you've got to be careful with that because prizes aren't necessarily always welcome. But if you do it independently and separately, and you can achieve it. That's what I did. Yeah. All right, those sorts of things. They're very quick, very simple, very easy to do. Friendlies, right? Get people here. He said he's not going to have anybody here until he can get rid of that climbing wall because it's a nuisance and it's dangerous. I agree. All right, you have big boys running up and down that court with that climbing wall there. It's just asking for trouble. Yeah. 100%. And that's the sort of thing you can do. And again, it can be very quick. You can also have mixed gender teams. You don't need to have this whole separation of church and state. Yeah? Right? You can. There's no issues with that at all. Right? You can have mixed age teams. Admittedly, the gym's a little small for that, but possible. But I said the big thing is to get those blooming hoops fixed. Well, how do you fix them? A little bit of manpower will align them better. But if they break, because they're outside and they're old and they're rusty and haven't been used for a while, then you'll need brand new ones. Yeah. He was quite excited by the idea of putting nets up. Yeah, okay. Go for it. I'm not. I don't really care about nets, to be perfectly honest. I just want the hoops to be straight. If they're on an angle, you're shooting on an angle all the time, and that's not good for you. So, all right. And they've been watching too much NBA. Filming Lancelot et al. Yeah? They keep falling away with their shots to the right. Whoa! And then they miss. They're already grounded, they've got no opposition, and then they do this dive and shoot. And why? There's nobody defending you. Just shoot. Alright? I think we've missed the point there. Yeah. Good diagram, but good assumption. You know those students who do like little tags and things, like the sort of American hip hop sort of tagging going on. Alright, okay. Good. Well done, team. Again, hello! Buongiorno. Is that Italian? Bonjour. Bonjour. Mon ami. Eh? I don't think she wants to come back because she's upset because of the jokes that I showed. Again, taxes with regards to negative consumption externalities are a go-to move. They are taxes, again, very straightforward for governments to put in place. So, and they will generate revenue, so we can tend to think of those first before we think of any sort of behavioural modifications in any other particular way. The desire, of course, is to increase cost of production and decrease the actual quantity consumed. Now this diagram looks a little different. What is missing? Yeah, all right, you could argue that. What is missing? What have I forgotten to put in it? Yeah, it's here. Lots of discussion and debate amongst economics teachers and economists about how best to illustrate this, because the effect that you're wanting to do is to actually impact the demand curve, okay? But you're going to put a tax on, which affects the cost of production. Yeah. Yeah.
Overshoot the quantity of that, where the produce more dairy loss, because technically society will be producing less than what we need, or what is to be required, or because it's a negative externality, the less it produces better.
Wow. All right, when you've written your PhD thesis, let me know. You should quote Andrew copiously. Yeah, essentially you're right. That if they misjudge where the tax should go and they end up taxing too much beyond the externality, then yes, you're right. The quantity at that point will be less than what is socially desirable. Yeah. So they would then be creating additional deadweight lots, essentially. However, they are also eliminating, or had eliminated, the negative externality. So better for society.
Not better for society, but like, because the good is a negative externality in itself, the decrease in consumption past like lower than socially optimum to be better than at socially optimum?
It's going to depend on your personal point of view, right? Because society has said we're happy with this amount, whatever that amount is. You know? But that may not be the amount you individually are happy with. I mean, some people are going to want to ban these goods altogether, and that does happen. And that can be a government policy, just get rid of it. Yes, so processed foods, talked about those, the sugar taxes, etc., added onto them. So this is the UK, I think, yes, The Guardian, and the suggestion is that there are 3,600 deaths every year from diet-related diseases, which they reckon is twice as many as who die on the actual roads themselves. Now that is obviously, 2015. So we are talking a number of years ago again with that. Choose another country and find data on the cost of, apologies for my English, that's supposed to be obesity in that country. Can you find one? And he also agreed with me that it's really important to have captains in the teams. Right, which was a battle I had when I first got here, to actually have a captain of a team and not share the leadership amongst all the players, which was what they were originally doing or wanting to do. Sorry? Oh, back then, I had to basically say, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And, we don't normally do that. If you have problems with having captains, and then there'll be people who'll be upset because they're not captain, and just let me do it. Yeah, but you run the risk there, Fatima, of getting me started on a rant on netball. So,
The transferable skills I have from
Ye-
that law.
that is true. They are very transferable. Yes, 100%. So, in the absence of any real basketball training or games for the last little while, then whatever netball-y things you've done will help somewhat. Do you know the sort of game where they have to immediately stop when someone looks at them? Stop. That's what netball reminds me of. Can't you? Stop. I'm going to wave my hand up.
Actually, long run.
Oh yeah.
And you have to do
Yeah, yeah. It is. Here we go. Good one from the USA. Now I'm going to say that is per year. Yes, annual. $3.38 billion per year. $79 per individual per year. What is the 6.38 one? Sure. What was the 6.38 one? Because you've got 3.38 billion. Oh, it ranges between 3.38 billion and 6.38 billion. Okay, I got it now. Sorry, I just had to read it. Malaysia, 17 to 30 billion, or 2% of our total GDP. That is quite a bit there, don't they? That's huge. 2% of the GDP. That's enormous. Yeah. See what else we found. India, 2025, cost India 13 billion. Okay, if that's US dollars, that's quite a bit. If it's rupee, maybe not so much. Cost of obesity in Australia is 11 billion Australian dollars. 5.4 billion direct health costs, 6.4 and indirect. Good. Okay. $4 to $7 billion US. That's incredible. Is that Thailand, Vincent? Well, it says Bath, so I'm just assuming it's Thailand. Or it could have been The Simpsons.
No.
So, 67% of 18 plus Australians are considered obese. 67%. That's a lot. Quite a bit. Yeah. So an ongoing issue, something that obviously has further repercussions and implications with regards to the current health crisis that we're in as well. Right, so we had case studies with regards to taxes on chocolate. So the idea of the sugar taxes, that's quite popular these days. Taxes on cigarettes, food and obesity, so the taxes on those, so there are several examples for those. And then the idea of positive externalities of consumption. Society's benefits greater than the actual relationship between the consumer and the producer, referring to merit goods, for example, education and preventative health care. I'm trying to remember what it was that I wanted you to notice with regards to that. can't think what it is. Right, positive externalities again, you are thinking, because it's consumption, about the demand curve, but the arrow is now pointing the other way. Because we are wanting more of this product, and again, potentially at a cheaper price, although that's not necessarily going to happen. Right? But we definitely want more of it. Right. Now, you've got another potential welfare gain. So higher level earners, yeah, again, it is a calculation, it is a triangle. It isn't specifically mentioned welfare gain, potential welfare gain. The welfare loss one is specifically mentioned, but the calculation should be the same. With regards to, so if they put it in, you will know how to do it. Now, very quickly, I am sure you'll be able to cope. Oh yes, subsidy idea. All right, solution number 2, positive advertising to impact on demand. Although it's difficult. I mean, how do you positively advertise about education? Show them videos of Americans. Andrew's just trying to phone a friend. The one that baffles me is the percentage of Americans who can't actually identify America on a map. That one baffles me. Yeah, not being able to work out which country in the Middle East is which, that can be quite difficult at times. All right? Not understanding that Africa is a continent and not a country, that's possibly more cultural and a cultural understanding than anything else, but not being able to identify the country you actually physically live in on a world map, that's a bit of a concern. Right? And it's not a small percentage. Right? You know the video clip I'm talking about, don't you? The Miss Universe one. Right. It's very old now. But they ask the Miss Universe people questions. Oh yeah, it wasn't Miss Universe, it was Miss Teen South Carolina. Hold on a minute. So maybe you can understand it then. And it's under the pressure of the spotlight and all of those other sorts of things. But it's been around, 2007, so it's a while ago now. Nearly 20 years. Huh? Okay. Cancel that. Try again. Alright, so I don't know about the volume, I have no idea. Let's try this.
Make it or break it moment. The ladies will have to demonstrate their ability to answer a thought-provoking, defining question. Sound simple? Easier said than done, especially when the whole country is watching. Here's how it works. Our panel of judges have prepared their own questions. So now, we will ask each finalist to pick the name of the judge, who will then ask the final question. Ladies, you'll have 30 seconds before you hear the sound of this bell. Good luck. To begin with South Carolina. Well, South Carolina, please pick out the name of the judge. Judge number 5, Amy Teagarden.
Recent polls have shown a fifth of Americans can't locate the U.S. on a world map. Why do you think this is? I personally believe that U.S. Americans are unable to do so because some people out there in our nation don't have maps, and I believe that our education rates, such as South Africa and Iraq, everywhere like such as, and I believe that our education over here in the U.S. should help the U.S., or should help South Africa, and should help the Iraq and the Asian countries, so we will be able to build up our future.
Thank you very much, South Carolina.
What? I forgot about this.
Exactly.
I want to help South Africa and Iraq so that Americans can be okay.
So in case you missed the statistic, it was 1/5, which is what, 20%?
Yeah.
Of Americans unable to identify America on a map. And that was in 2007. So, but to be fair, some school districts, because they run out of money, they actually cut programs from the school and they just don't offer subjects. All right, team, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Have a fantastic day. We will see you on Thursday. We will finish this one off on Thursday. Next week we will look to do a couple of others depending how much we get through. Otherwise, hey Corneta, have a fantastic day. See you. Thank you, Seon. Thank you, Sariha. See you. Do you have a question, Sariha? Okay, I'm going to turn off the meet. If you have any questions, you can send me an email.